Hello, thank you so much for being here. I hope you're having an amazing day so far. Today, I want to ask what is it that created the version of you that makes the decisions that you make today in your life? So, for example, what is it that makes you feel like you need to be doing the work or live the life that you have today? Very often, and I'm saying this because I'm reflecting a lot on this these days. Very often, we create a life based on our programming. I would say very often, as in 99.99% of the time. Some people have been able to be so true to themselves and who they authentically are throughout their entire lives that their programming is not the thing that is making their decisions. They're so true to themselves that they just know what is right and wrong for them. And they follow life based on that. And I've met like one person in my entire life that has been like that. Now, if you're like that too, great, congratulations. You're one of the very few people. Um, Mostly, we are shaped into the person that we are today, right? We are born not knowing anything about life. And then the people who are in our influence, such as our caretakers or teachers or role models, they help us understand who we should be. And they do that based on their own programming. So they repeat the stories that they were told growing up, or maybe they create the opposite story, right? If you grow up and being like really traumatized by the stories that your parents told you, you're gonna make the opposite story, and you're gonna tell that to your kids. In whatever way, we grow up with a story of what does a good life look like, right? So in my generation, I'm born in the 80s, late 80s. Uh, Pretty much anyone and everyone who was born during that period of time could choose between being a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or go to business school. Well, guess what? I went to business school. I got a master's in international marketing and management. And I hated every single second of it. And I was like, how am I going to get out into life and apply these learnings from studying that I disliked so much at several occasions? I thought about just like, let me drop out and open a bakery because all I wanted to do was bake. Bake and be a baker, right? That was not part of the this is what your life is supposed to look like. So many of us, we make decisions based on what are we told, what story are we following, what story are we telling ourselves, because if we're having a story repeated to us over and over and over and over again, then that is the story we tell ourselves internally as well, right? It builds the foundation of our belief systems and our thoughts. Our beliefs feed into our thoughts, and our thoughts feed into our emotions, and our emotions feed into our actions, and then those actions create the results that we have in life. So that's the whole part about working on our programming and creating transformation is by you start early on in the chain, you work on your beliefs, you work on your thoughts, you work then on even feeding positive emotion, amazing emotion, um, overriding the emotions. If you've been following my content for a while, you know that I do not support that. I'm not a fan of overriding emotion. So, what else can you do? You might be like, yeah, but this is who I am. I've been programmed into this person, but it's who I am. And I would just say, no, it is not necessarily who you are. Actually, if you haven't been doing your personal development work, most likely the person you think you are has nothing to do with the person that you authentically deep down are, right? That the soul that keeps screaming at you, please, let's do something different. I can't do this life anymore. And then we distract it with Netflix and PlayStations and drinking and whatever it is. And then we start feeling anxious and we don't understand why we're anxious, but it's because we haven't been listening to those feelings that we have very neatly neglected throughout decades of programming. So, what creates this version of you that makes the decisions for your life? Now, I like to dig into really understanding how this programming was built. So, going back into discovering, okay, what were the stories and the messages that I got growing up? And it's so much fun when you see it in someone else. When you hear it, when you hear someone else say it, you're like, what in the world? Why would you ever think that? I was talking to someone who's very dear to me, and they had just switched jobs again, um, because they just kept feeling unfulfilled in that work. And it was like, it's not like they kept changing jobs, but it was like maybe once per year, once every 2 years, they shifted. And then they said one day, oh, I need to stay in this job for at least 3 to 5 years because, I can't have a CV where I keep changing jobs every 1 to 2 years and I don't have like one job that I've stayed in for a long time. And they're like, I don't know, early 30s. Like, what in the world do you mean? Why? With your skill set, your incredible, ridiculously nerdy, very specific skill set, you can do whatever you want. You do not have to stay in a job that you don't like for 3 to 5 years, because we grow up being told, oh, the resume is everything. We know what the resume today does not, like, it is not that important. If you look at like Gen Z resumes, 1 to 2 years in each job is quite a lot, right? So what are these stories that we're telling ourselves about the life that we're supposed to live, and how are we allowing ourselves to stay miserable because of these stories? How about we create new stories that empower us to make decisions that we actually want to make? Right. I remember this of jumping between jobs, and I stayed in jobs for several years at a time as well. And I would be jumping between jobs because I needed the feeling of something new. I needed the feeling of something different. And I thought that this different would fulfill me in a different way. And all it did was just a new job. It was this new job with the exact same type of work culture, with tasks that weren't, stimulating, right? For some people love repetitive work. Some people love repetitive work, and I applaud you because we need you in this life. And if that's you, please go find work where you have a lot of repetition so that you can do that and you can master it, and you can feel like you're the best person in the whole world to do that specific thing. And that's going to be incredible for you. And that's great. I'm not here to judge that one thing is right and one thing is wrong. It is when we try to force ourselves to do something that is not aligned with the person that we deep inside are. So if you're constantly showing up under the story that you've been told, but you feel this discrepancy, there's just like this burning and yearning for something else, go discover what that something else is. This one beautiful life is too short and too precious to waste it on a life where you get up in the morning and you go, like, drag yourself to work to do something. You just have to go through those 8 hours or however much it is, and then when you're done, you go to the gym, and then you come home and you put on TV, and you have some takeout food because you're so drained that you can't actually think, you can't actually do things that you enjoy, because you just need to replenish and rest and just sleep, and then get up in the next day and do it all over again. Instead of filling your life up with things that are beautiful and joyful and happy. And really the only way that we can understand what that is by constantly trying out new things and figuring out what actually fills my cup. So many of us, we don't know what we love doing because we don't allow ourselves to try new things. We don't allow ourselves to really sit and tap into, am I enjoying this or not? I used to spend a lot of time like going out, and I had to drink in order to be in those places, because I don't like places that are loud. I don't like places where there are crowds. I'm very introverted, but I kept putting myself in these places because they're very distracting, right? Loud music and lots of people, very, very distracting. Dance floors, distracting. Alcohol, distracting. But I would drink in order to be there because I couldn't be there sober. So I needed that extra distraction on my distraction. And then my hangover would be another distraction. And then suddenly it's Monday again, right? So and it just became such a habit. It became such a ritual, something that I just had to do because, I couldn't stay home Friday night alone without going out, because then I would have to deal with the fact that I didn't like my Monday through Friday. I had to deal with the fact that I was living a life that wasn't full of joy and purpose. That wasn't what I actually wanted. I had to deal with the fact that, the sadness, the darkness, the grayness, it just creeped in on me and just it had me in this feeling of just being unfulfilled and unhappy and unsatisfied. And that's why we need all of these distractions. But when we have all of the distractions, we can't actually tap into what is it that we're feeling, what is it we're experiencing, what is it that we're going through, and what could we actually do to change this. In order to change anything, we need to understand what is there now. We need to understand why we're so unfulfilled. And in order to create this life that we love, we need to really figure out what is it that we love, right? It shouldn't be so hard, but for most people it is incredibly hard to discover what it is that we love doing, because we think the distractions are what we love doing, because the distractions are removing the pain, right? The distractions are removing that sense of, I don't want to do this anymore. Oh, this is frustration. The frustration, the stress, the negativity. And then we use the distractions to feel not that. Okay, so if we spend our days feeling stressed and frustrated, then a distraction is going to feel like it's a joyful, good thing because it removes the negative emotion. But it's not actually a positive emotion. It is more like a numbing of the negative emotion. So if we want to truly understand what joy and happiness and fulfillment feels like, we need to be able to let go of the distraction. We need to be able to let go of the stress and the frustration. And then we need to start exploring what are the things that actually make us happy. And then you would say, oh, but Rebecca, I'm not in a position where I can just leave my job. Okay, but what kind of tasks can you leave? What kind of toxic work colleagues can you stop hanging out with? What kind of negative friends can you stop being in contact with? What can you remove that is currently draining you so that you can create room for the things that could fulfill you? What can you stop doing in your workplace? Or how can you even stop having a specific type of emotion towards it? Many of us like to kind of fill up our day with a lot of busy work that isn't actually constructive, that isn't actually creating value, instead of sitting down and figuring out, how do I create the most value out of the time that I have? I used to spend so much extra time overtime at work because I used my work as a distraction, right? Then I would put on all of these hours so I didn't have to go home and deal with the fact that I was frustrated and that I was unfulfilled. So I use that as my distraction. I could very easily say, you know what? I'm going to do my core work that creates the most value, the work that is going to make my boss the most happy. I'm going to go all in on that. And then all of these extra things that I'm doing just to stay busy, I'm going to stop doing those. Or I'm going to talk to my manager about having them allocated to someone else. Or, just change things really. And then you might say, oh, but I don't have that type of job. Okay, but look at what can you do? I'm not saying you need to quit your job. What can you do? What things outside of work right now are you engaging in that you can let go of? Because we all have something that can be dropped. We all have something that we're feeding into that we can stop feeding into. And even if that is the negative self-talk on the way to work, that is something you can let go of that is draining you. Now, I know that is a lot easier said than done, because our bodies get literally addicted to any emotion, to any chemical reaction in our brains and in our bodies that is reaffirming where we are. Our brains like to stay where we are because we know that's safe. So it's a survival technique. But that also means that when we have a pattern of having a specific type of negative emotion, it can be the victimhood mentality, it can be resentment, it can be frustration, it can be whatever it is. what we then do, and all of these emotions are very draining of our energy. But what we do is that we start playing out scenarios and thinking about scenarios and doing things that trigger these emotions of victimhood, of frustration, of unfulfillment, of whatever it is that puts us in that emotional state that triggers the chemicals that the body wants. And it can be really, really hard to let go of because the body is literally addicted. So it needs to be treated with the same respect and attention as any other addiction. Any addiction to alcohol, cigarettes, sugar. We need the same type of determination when it comes to negative thinking. And it's really hard because you can't just stop buying negative thoughts the way that you can stop buying alcohol and not having it at home. So it needs constant attention and intention and determination, as is with any other type of identity shift. But start figuring out what are the things that I am engaging in that are draining, and which one of these can I actually do something about? Because we all have something we can do something about. And then take that now, the energy that you have available now that you've stopped doing the other thing, and figure out what is it that I love doing? What can I really tap into that I would absolutely love doing for the rest of my life? And very often this comes down to serving other people. Where do I have an impact? Where do I have influence? Where do I have a feeling that what I do is important? And for other people, it's like, I just need a very simple 9 to 5 that doesn't require me to do a lot of extra work, that pays my bills so that I can go home and I can feel fulfilled with my family. Maybe that's who you are, and that's totally fine. That is discovering what is it that's important to you. And we don't all know, not everyone knows it, right? Some people know it, most people don't. So that is why in identity shifting, it's so important to figure out whatever am I doing right now, what it is that I'm doing right now, what is it created from? Why am I doing it? Am I doing it because I want to do this, or am I doing this because someone else told me that this is what I'm supposed to do? Because if we're just living life the way that someone else told you that you're supposed to do it, then you're not living life on your own terms. You're living someone else's plan for you. So, and figuring that out, right, is the first step. Discovery, awareness, first step. Identifying what is there now is the first step. So, that's a little bit all over the place. It's getting towards the end of the day here. And I just really wanted to come in and talk about this now, because this is something that has been on my mind a lot lately. So let me know, as always, if you have any questions, any comments, any future suggested topics. If some of this didn't make any sense, if you disagree, if you agree, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. So have a beautiful day. Thank you. Bye.